and a very warm welcome to yet another episode of the We Talk Talent series. Those who have been following us know that the We Talk Talent series is a special initiative by the Economic Times HR World, where we reveal the latest trends surrounding the human capital management space. And I'm very delighted to welcome today's guest with us, Mr. Vijay Colaco, HR Director, Intel India. Welcome, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Priya. It's an honor to actually have a conversation with you today.
Its pleasure is all ours for hosting you today. I will start with a brief introduction of Vijay. In his current role, Vijay is responsible for driving Intel India's people strategy with a strong and diverse HR team. In his 17 years of career span as a core HR professional, he has delivered excellence in developing strong leadership teams, architecting organization to deliver optimum result, and attracting and growing talent through robust talent strategies. His breadth of industry domain ranges from ITES, IT to semiconductors with organizations such as Infosys and McAfee to name a few prior joining to Intel. He is strong leadership ally for diversity, equity, and inclusion and truly believes that to move needle in DE&I, it is imperative for the ecosystem to come together and leverage technology to build an inclusive world. On the personal side, he is passionate about performing arts and spend time imparting his creativity with various diverse and equal opportunity groups. So, without any further ado, I will straight jump into my first question, Vijay, and ask you how is your industry tackling the changes that the workplace has gone through over the past couple of years? If you could share a brief overview with us.
Absolutely. In fact, I think, Priya, that's a big topic, and pretty much I think everybody in the HR community will be either discussing it on top of their mind, especially post-pandemic, right? I think the very fact that we had the pandemic set in itself got us into ways of working that nobody ever thought that they would be landing into, right? And then you had to start balancing personal priorities with professional priorities and still ensure that you are able to, keep the business running, at the same time manage what the uncertainties were in the environment. But having said that, I'm going to put the pandemic a little behind and focus on what the future looks like, or at least in the current scenario, and what the future looks like going forward. Let me start off by just saying that there is no one size fits all. I think each organization is looking at what makes most sense to them and what really goes well with the philosophy of the organization, right? Some organizations believe bring back the entire workforce into the offices so that we're able to see more collaborative partnerships that we've missed out in the past. Maybe there's going to be more product focus and we'll be able to deliver results. And some industries are looking at a 3+2, a 2+3 kind of a combination. So you're basically saying 2 days in the office, 3 days work from home, or 3 days in the office, 2 days work from home. And then you have a different set of organizations that are looking at flexibility. And when you use the word flexibility, you really can't go ahead and say, hey, this particular day, I want you to be in office. You're basically actually giving the autonomy to the individual to start deciding in terms of what works best. Now, let's bring this home a little bit, right? At Intel, our focus has been on reimagining the future of the workspace. And what's more important is for an innovation or an innovative company, you've got to be innovative with your ideas as well. So our focus has been on two important aspects. We put the focus on people and we put the focus on products. And when we combine the two of them, we say, let's go ahead and drive a very result-oriented mindset. So you put results first. Now, when you put results first, then you look at everything else backward. So basically you're saying, if I have to achieve results, do I need everybody in the workforce today in the office? Do I have to look at maybe a combination of the two? Or should I be looking at different ways of handling the scenario that would actually give me the results, yet give a lot of flexibility to the employees? So let me simplify this for you. The way we've approached this actually is in three ways. So what we're doing is, the first one is we said, you need a certain critical workforce to be in office. And that's extremely important. So we call them the on-site workforce. They have to be there 5 days a week. We got them to be working in our labs, and it becomes extremely critical. So we have that one set of workforce that comes into work pretty much every day. Now you have the second set, which we call as the hybrid model. That's where the combination is about 3+2 or 2+3. But at Intel, we don't mandate that. We ensure that the employee has a conversation with the manager and then decides on days that they need to be in office and ensure that they're most productive. And in the other days, they're working from home and still being extremely productive. And last but not the least, we're looking at remote employees. These are the ones who go back into the pandemic days that we had, right? So you're pretty much working from home, but at the same time, you're extremely productive. So for us, the structure has been, how do you have a combination of all the three and try and balance in a way that your result-oriented mindset is not shifting. And to make that successful, we adopted a new approach called OKRs, which is basically objectives and key results. An employee and the manager, the beginning of the year, they sit down and they look at the overall organizational priorities. They look at the business priorities. They look at the team priorities. And what they do is they have a dialogue in terms of what is extremely important to achieve towards the end of the year, and collaboratively define exactly what those goals need to be and put them in the system. And every quarter, there is a conversation between the manager and the employee to see where do they stand on some of those objectives. Now, these could be bold goals. These could be goals that's driving towards the end result of the organization, but it keeps you in check and then slowly defeats the purpose of having everybody in office every day, but at the same time ensuring that there's accountability to come in office whenever you want to. So again, it's an organizational philosophy. So like I told you, it depends on what stage the organizations are at, what philosophy is driving them. And at the end of the day, if it works for them, it works for them. And that's really the future of work that we're seeing in the current scenario at the moment.
Yeah, very rightly said, Vijay. Flexibility and the mindset of the organization along with the individual has changed a lot, and it has the focus has been shifted to the flexibility a lot. And as you mentioned about those three models, that remote, hybrid, and the on-site work, that also the new models, on-site has always been there. The new two models that we have gotten post-pandemic, like hybrid and remote, also required a lot of new skills that have been in demand lately. So with that, I would like to ask you, according to you and your industry demands, what type of skill shortage do you think is causing the talent war? Since the talent war has always been there. Earlier, it used to be a little smaller in scale, but post-pandemic, it has widened.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you said it was always there and it's never going to go away, right? So that's the way I see it, right? And I think that's what makes HR so much more relevant. That's what makes talent organizations that much more relevant in the current scenario. So let me just simplify this for us and then maybe go deeper into how I see this from an organization standpoint. At a broad level, the demand and supply will continue to have its own course in the ecosystem. And the way I look at it from my perspective is that companies, as they continue to invest in countries like India, and I'm talking from an Indian perspective, you will continuously see a demand for the talent also rising. However, it also depends on what stage the organizations are at. Some organizations need more of a particular skill. Some organizations need less of a critical skill. And it all ties into what are some of the retention strategies that companies are actually having today that also drives the need or the demand and supply in that particular organization. So when I look at this at a broad level and coming closer to home, if I look at Intel as an organization and very similar semiconductor organizations, the skill that we will continue to see in demand would continue to be in the hardware space, in the software space, in the AI and machine learning space. And specifically, when you look at the domains, it would be graphics, it would continue to be 5G, it would continue to be in the space of IoTG, data center, and it will also be in the design engineering world, because that's what we are known for, creating SoCs. We'll talk deeper into what those skills actually mean, but I'm going to double down in terms of what it means for us as an organization in terms of where we're losing and how we need to continue to look at the talent demand in the ecosystem. So it starts off with the first thing in terms of where are we losing. So specifically when you look at our organizations today, and this could be any organization within the India ecosystem, is what levels of employees are you losing? Are you losing employees at the entry level? Are you losing employees at the mid level? Are you losing employees at the senior level? So that's your starting point. You've got to be very clear about where is more of the damage that you're seeing. Because with those exits, what kind of an implication do you have? Because that's how you build a stronger strategy in terms of an intake into the organization. So where are you losing? The second one for me is, whom are you losing? Now, whom are you losing would purely be around experience levels. Let me tell you this. You can bring in a lot of newer employees in the organization who are fresh graduates from the universities. You can train them and get them ready, but there's always a ramp time. But when you begin to lose your employees at a middle level, you're losing key skills and you're also losing experience levels. And then when you lose employees at a senior most level, you're losing critical talent who could also have a followership model, who could also go ahead and imply that they're going to be taking more of your internal talent into the other organizations that they leave. And that's a true philosophy of any higher end retention kind of a strategy. So whom are you losing becomes extremely critical. The third one, to your specific point, is what are you losing? The what skill becomes extremely important. And today, I think when I look at some of the niche skills that we are going after would be DFT, which is designed for tests. You're talking about RTL, analog, software applications. You're looking at people who have core graphics experience. Now, it's important that we need to know that in certain pockets, when you lose some of these critical, maybe architectural engineers, it becomes so much more critical for us in terms of filling that void or a gap, and that sometimes takes time, and that's why the criticality of that will become so much more important to us. So we're always looking at what are the skills that we can't afford to keep losing and keep retaining the talent, but at the same time, focusing on the external environment in terms of how do you build that talent supply. So that's the third thing, just to do with what are we losing. And most importantly, you've got to be looking at why are we losing these employees. Now, when you are looking at the why aspect of it, there could be just three major reasons that comes to my mind all the time. You lose employees. Number one is because they're not seeing a career trajectory. They're not seeing a growth path. They're not seeing opportunities, which also is your reverse attraction model that you should be focusing on. So it's basically looking at career pathing, which is one important aspect. The second one is culture. Is your culture in the organization enabling a psychologically safe environment, bringing in innovative work for your employees to thrive? And most importantly, are they finding the values in sync with their own personal values? It's extremely important that we have a blend of all of these things. And last but not the least, a common topic has always been compensation. Everybody wants to know how much am I getting paid and how much am I getting paid better than my peer in the external ecosystem. Now, when you look at these internal factors, that drives the demand. So I would say organizations that are battling with extreme attrition, there'll always be an extreme demand from the external market, always attracting that talent. But at the same time, there are some organizations where you're not seeing massive attrition, but you're also seeing attrition in certain segments. And that could be a critical skill that we have to go after. So if I have to look at the demand and supply signals, to keep it simple, Priya, we have to look at the where, what, why, and whom are we losing, and then have a strategy to say, what should the ecosystem look like? How do I build the ecosystem, which I'll talk about in my further thoughts as I build them. But how do you build an ecosystem to build that supply into the organization? Because you don't need them at one go. It's over a period of time. So that's the way I would look at, giving you a perspective of how I see the demand signals growing, at the same time, the need for a supply into the organizations like ours.
Thank you, Vijay. Those are very insightful points, and I'm sure that will help our audiences also to build on those points and work towards solving the problem that we all have been going through, the high attrition rates in the industry. So with that, I would jump into my next question and ask you if you can throw some light on your DE&I agenda, since we all know how passionate you are about this topic.
Absolutely. I'm extremely passionate. I'm also an ally. And what's more important is that I always believe that if you're an organization that's building products for the ecosystem, irrespective of which country are you in, it's best that your organization is a representation of the ecosystem. That should be a fundamental principle to drive diversity in your organization, not as a number game. That's not my philosophy. My philosophy is, what is the representation of the community? And if that representation is not fulfilled within your organization, you may not be building the right products for the external environment. You've got to be looking at that more holistically. So having said that, I always quote this very famous quote that I heard from one of my fellow mentors in the past. And that is, diversity is being invited to a party, but inclusion is being invited to the dance floor. And I think many of the times we've seen, we go into a party, we're all invited, but you don't get that attention that you need. And then you're like expecting somebody else to come and call you. And that's what inclusion is all about. So I'll start with the foundation of saying that inclusion is a bedrock of Intel in everything that we do. And for us, inclusion means just two important things: building and creating a psychologically safe environment. And the second aspect is respecting identities and individualities. Because I could be individualistic, I have my own preference and I have my own style. Are you creating a psychologically safe environment for me to come and thrive in this organization? And that really helps us in terms of our employee value proposition as well. So having said that, Priya, now I'm going to talk about our diversity agenda within Intel. We started with the first one, and that is Women at Intel. And Women at Intel focuses on three important vectors. The first one would be diversity representation from a women's standpoint or a woman's standpoint, right? Our focus is to try and get as close to what the ecosystem is all about. So in simple math, if I look at India today, we produce about 48% women graduates compared to male, which would be about 52%. But as you see that workforce coming into the actual workforce, like a company like Intel or any other organization, that really comes down to approximately 25%, which means a lot of them make their own choices and move on. And sometimes I don't think they're as informed about what these opportunities look like and the flexibility organizations can offer. So my constant endeavor, along with my entire team, has been, how do you increase on a year-on-year basis our representation of women in our workforce? And that's our number one priority in terms of our representation. Number two would be women in leadership roles. And that's an important focus area. And I believe, you can look at an organization and say, who's leading your organization? And how many of them are women in your exec circle or your C-suite? And that really starts then showing in terms of how's the organization invested in the growth and development of their women employees in the organization. So I've been having constant discussions, and a focus area being building a strong women pipeline into leadership roles. And that's an extremely important aspect for me within the chapter, which is called as Women at Intel. And the third and the most important aspect is about bringing back women who are on career breaks, returning mothers, and giving them the opportunity to be able to see that Intel is a place where they can come and they can learn, they can work, they can earn, at the same time they're able to have a flexible environment. So starts off with WIN as the first important aspect, which is looking at women representation. The second one, which is iGlobe, and I'm an ally of iGlobe, which is basically the LGBTQ plus community. Our focus has always been in terms of building an entire environment that's psychologically safe. And I use that word, respecting individuality and identities. And that comes from my firm belief of being an ally of the iGlobe community. So the whole focus is around, how do you educate your leaders? How do you build an environment people are welcoming of people from all walks of life? Celebrating some of those important days and not just making it a celebration, but actually living that in every action. So that's the second big piece. And there's a lot of work that we've been doing in that particular space on a regular basis around iGlobe. The third one is to do with IDAN, which is the Intel's Disability and Access Network. Our focus is on actually looking at an infrastructure that makes it extremely seamless and conducive for people with disabilities to come and work with us. And we've done that. We've gone ahead and ensured all our buildings are in place. We're also looking at a curriculum that we could go and deploy in NGOs and various PWD institutes, where we can go and educate them about the newest technology and hire them into our workforce. But most importantly, people whom we've already hired, building an environment that makes them feel absolutely comfortable and safe to work in. The fourth one is around veterans. It's a new vector that we're looking at in terms of creating opportunities for people in the armed forces. And there's some focused work in that particular area. And last but not the least is our next generation, which is a big topic today. Our focus is on how do you try and enable Intel as an organization that represents a millennial brand as well, or you call the Gen Z brand as well, and ensure that people feel that this is an equal opportunity player in terms of all generation groups where they can be successful. So that's another focus area where we hone, invest, and grow some of our extremely bright minds who could become future leaders for Intel. So that's really our DAI agenda and the philosophy around how we drive it.
Yeah, those are some great initiative, and you initially said it absolutely correctly, that it's how you show the world that what you are doing instead of just by the words
Absolutely.
that you put out in the world. Since you also at the end of this answer mentioned about the new generation. So I will pick up my last question from there and go ahead and ask you, what's your take on new generation entering the workforce, and how do you see their expectation different from the previous generation that has been part of work from long time now?
Yeah, I have a slightly different way of looking at this. And in fact, I was challenged by one of the, we were just in a forum and we were all talking and we just said the millennial group. And one person stood up and said, why are you calling us a millennial group? We are an equal part of this workforce. So do not draw these lines because you're stereotyping us. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it, Priya. But I was coached by the way, I was coached by a representative from the group to say that if we can blur the lines of generation and focus on what's more important as a unified workforce, irrespective of what age group we are in, we'll be able to be more successful. Having said that, I think you can't take away from the fact that it requires a change in the way we think and the way we work, because I see that the newer workforce that's coming into the organization thinks differently. They're very clear about what they want, right? They're very clear about what they want to go and work on, and they're very clear about what they expect in terms of results and returns from the organization. So I call it the what's in it for me group, which is very clear. And I think that's a good thing to have, because if you're clear, you clearly know what you want to go and achieve, and you will always have the right conversations. So number one, I think in order to get ready for the new generation that we keep calling, I think, and again, lack of a better word right now, I'm going to get new generation, but I would just call them the new workforce that's coming in, is the fact that they want a place where they are accepted, welcomed, and respected for who they are. And they would be absolutely innovative and creative in a place that would allow them that psychologically safe place. So they want, number one, a psychologically safe place that ties beautifully in terms of the values that you're trying to promote. So if your values are very different from their values, you're going to be certainly seeing that they would come in, but they would go sooner than you expect them to actually stay, right? Number one. Number two, they want to look at fearless innovation. Be prepared. They will ask you the tough questions. The reason why they ask you the tough questions is because they use the products that you are creating more than anybody else. So they know exactly what the end user wants. They will challenge you, and they will also bring in an innovative solution. So is your organization ready to give them the platform to thrive, to innovate, to create is extremely important. So be ready to be challenging the status quo. So if you are somebody, even as the most senior most leader, who's not prepared to hear and listen to tough questions, you're going to find it hard. Because like I told you, it's a what's in it for me age group. So they have decisions made for themselves basis how they see the environment play out. So very clear, they are going to be challenging you. At the same time, you have to be able to create a fearless, innovative environment for them to go and thrive. The third, keep communication absolutely simple and transparent. It's the world of text messages, 3 words, 4 words, get the message out. Big branding strategies worked in the past. Now it's about how can you get to me in 10 seconds? Are you able to touch the right nerve? I think this is the group that's always saying, keep it simple. We always kept saying that in the past, the KISS rule, right? Keep it simple or short and simple. This is the group that always asks you that. Communicate, keep it simple, tell me what it is, let's move on. Because I think the way our minds have been tuned today, our attention span has reduced quite a bit because we want to focus on things that we want to focus on. So if you're not communicating as effectively, they can switch off. So I always tell leaders, ensure that your communications in a way that attracts them, in a way that they find it very meaningful, but do not go long-worded, do not over-brand it. They like to keep it very, very simple. The last but not the least, this is a group which is a growth mindset group. So if your organization's not creating an opportunity for them to learn and keep growing, I think there is a point that they will feel saturated. And that's why today there's a lot of conversations around the fact that we see early entrants in the 0 to 3 year bracket coming and growing out of the organization quicker because they're not able to gel. They don't see that future. And so it's important that you're able to combine your product philosophy, the growth path of the organization, and the opportunities for them to grow very clearly laid out. Now, as you do this, in order to blur the lines of generations across different workforces in the organization, I think the most simple or the simplest of all recommendations that I have is every person, whether in the new generation workforce or the senior generation workforce, you've got to be self-aware. You've got to be mindful and watch out for your micro iniquities playing out, because people are watching you. What you say touches people. Sometimes what you don't say is also inferred. So you have to be very smart about it. If you are somebody who's welcoming a group of people, when you go into a meeting, you blur the lines of ages, you bring in a product mindset. That's what they want. They say, let's put the product first, remove the generations outside, and ensure that we have a more collaborative partnership in our discussions as well. So I would say a very simple thing is that you don't need to go out and do extensive training programs and coaching sessions. I think it just needs two important things for us. One, be self-aware, and two, be very accepting of the changes the world is bringing today. And you've got to mold yourself in the newer ways of doing things and blur the lines of generation. That would really be my perspective around the newer generation and how we need to be approaching this across all generations in an organization.
Thanks, Vijay. I think you have got the nerve of the new generation. Like you said, what's in it for me in this scenario? So thank you so much for sharing all those points with us today and being here. I'm sure audiences have gotten so much new perspectives from your point of view, and they have note down the important points that they want to work in their organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priya. It was a pleasure having this conversation today, and thank you for the opportunity.
So this is it for this episode. We will look forward to hosting you for another one. Thank you.
Thank you.